Celia Wade-Brown has a very fiery speech.
Tahitanga in the House today, the unity and the support for each other and the people we know in our communities and our own whānau that suffer from mental health and their families that suffer with them, and the difficulties that workplaces and schools have when one or more members suffer from bad mental health. Mental health is not something we can vaccinate against. Mental health is not something that is always biological or genetic or predetermined. Mental health is also something that is a bigger social society issue. I'm really pleased that we're talking about men's mental health. We're talking about whether it's professions of farmer, builder, fishing. Yes, it's great that that's able to be recognised and talked about, though I still think that individuals in those areas have great difficulty realising that it's not just them, that they are able to ask for help, whether it's from their whānau or from the professional support. And I'd like to acknowledge the mention of family and sexual violence as a causal factor in people's mental health. And often poor mental health is a natural response to pressures. And I'd like this House to consider to what extent we are adding to those pressures from time to time. And yes, that is a thing across the House, how we behave to each other, but I'm more meaning in terms of the legislation that we produce and the way we talk about groups of people. One of the most vulnerable groups to poor mental health is people who are non-binary. Not just when they are adolescents, finding their identity, but also as adults. Nominally, they're much more accepted, but if you look at the statistics, they often feel oppressed and not part of mainstream society. And I think we need to think about when we're producing legislation that discriminates, what are we actually doing for mental health? Mental health is much bigger than just the professionals and the funding in the health sector. And while I acknowledge, and I'd like to acknowledge Minister Ducey and his work in clearly setting out some of the issues in mental health, let's not forget some of the more traditional issues of mental health that may be temporary, but may lead to permanent tragedy. Postnatal depression, menopausal changes, and of course, the effects of dementia and ageing. There are a huge number of issues, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this strategy can possibly prioritise across them. That's not to say it shouldn't be done, I just think it's going to be extremely difficult. And my colleague, Francisco Hernandez, did mention also some of the issues that press upon, again, particularly young people, which is what kind of a future they're going to have. Are they going to have a future? Some people might think of it in terms of can they buy a house, but I think there are some more existential issues at play in whether they actually feel they have hope. And I think that that is not necessarily a criticism of other parties. When our party paints a dark picture of something like climate change, we also need to talk about how people can actually have agency and hope as well. So there's some pretty wide ramifications to mental health. I look forward to better access to diagnosis, appropriate medicines, support at school and later on, and above all, a less divisive and more inclusive society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In my notes, I put that as a fiery speech, but it probably was more fiery in content, but civil and polite.
That's Celia in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like she's just basically, literally said exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Mentioned the missing part on there, which is our, was it trans and non-binary community, which up until that point hadn't actually appeared in the debate.
That's correct. Yes, I mean, looking through the transcript, yes. Yeah, Celia, I pretty much agree with everything she just said right there. Yeah, so there's not much in terms of commentary I can offer on that one.
Yeah.